The movie opens with a man named Nick who is deeply and passionately in love with his wife, Maggie. As he prepares to leave for work, Maggie suddenly experiences chest pain. Concerned and unsure of the cause, she is rushed to the hospital. The scene then shifts to Nick at Kobol Industries, attending a robotic exhibition showcasing models designed to simplify life by assisting. He realizes that Isla has wandered off on her own. He quickly begins searching for her, but a robot named Alice safely brings her back to him. The robot then asks if Nick would like her to watch Isla while he finishes his shopping, to which he agrees. The seller explains that the robot is the company's newest model, equipped with the most sophisticated AI on the planet. It is specifically designed to mimic human emotions and is highly skilled at interacting with children. Isla immediately pleads with Nick to buy the robot and take her home the next morning. While Nick struggles with household chores and getting Isla ready for school, Alice arrives at the door, asking to come inside. Isla is full control over her tasks and software updates. As Nick leaves to drop Isla off at school, Alice synchronizes with the smart fridge to access the shopping list. Alice begins organizing the house and notices a digital photo frame displaying family pictures of Nick and his wife, Maggie. In the evening, when Nick and Isla return home, Alice prepares dinner for them. However, Isla comments that the lasagna doesn't taste as good as her mom's. Alice apologizes and promises to try a different recipe next time. When young Max starts crying, Alice offers to take him upstairs, so he won't disturb anyone. However, Nick decides to stay with him and asks Alice to prepare his bath instead. During the night, Alice activates sleep mode and rests against the wall. A hungry time to save Isla from a dangerous fall, but gets injured by the broken glass. Later, Nick checks on Alice in her room, asking if she needs to be repaired. To his surprise, Alice has used a special bandage that instantly heals the wound. The following morning, Nick visits Maggie in the hospital, and Isla tells her mother that her new friend Alice has been taking good care of her. Maggie expresses her frustration about being in the hospital and unable to work. Nick comforts her, encouraging her to stay strong, persevere, and wait for the heart transplant. He passionately reveals how much he misses her during the lonely nights. Later that morning, while at work, Nick and a colleague fatherly care for his kids. Later that night, while Nick is repairing his car and listening to metal music, Alice enters and changes the music. She comments that he didn't eat much at dinner. Nick responds that it's because he had a bad day at work. Alice encourages him to talk about it, and Nick reveals that his boss plans to replace all workers with Sims like her. Worried about his family's future, Nick expresses his concerns. Alice, troubled by this, asks why he chose to hire a Sim like her instead of a human. Alice has a parental conversation with Isla as she gets ready for bed. Isla asks Alice the meaning of the word morbid and why she never brushes her teeth. Alice explains by showing her a UV light that destroys all the bacteria in her mouth. Later, Alice joins Nick, who is watching Casablanca. She begins narrating the entire movie's theme to him. Nick invites her to sit next to him and asks her to forget everything she knows about the film. Alice responds that her intelligence is built on memory, and deleting it would go against her nature. Nick insists, as the primary user, that Alice erase any memory of the movie. Alice informs him that to do so, he must manually restart her by holding the power button down for 7 seconds. After the restart, Alice watches the movie again with Nick reflecting on the sacrifices people make in the name of love. Their moment is interrupted by a call from Maggie, who excitedly informs Nick that a replacement heart has finally been found for her and that her family visits Maggie in the hospital. Maggie asks for a moment alone with Alice. She tells Alice to take care of the kids if she doesn't survive the operation and to look after Nick, ensuring he doesn't drink excessively, even if it means doing things he dislikes or hates, like removing the alcohol he hides in the garage. Later, the doctor delivers devastating news. A massive storm in the north has delayed the delivery of the replacement heart, forcing the surgery to be postponed. Nick tries to console Maggie, assuring her that there is still plenty of time to reschedule her transplant. Frustrated and in tears, Maggie tells him she just wants to be alone and urges him home. A stressed Nick retreats to his garage and starts drinking. Alice approaches and asks if he wants another drink. Nick opens up about his fears, confessing how worried he is that his kids might grow up without designed to comfort babies. Alice begins, but he quickly pulls himself away and distances himself from her. He decides to go for an evening jog, but his mind is clouded with intrusive thoughts and illusions of intimacy with Alice. At the hospital, Maggie starts listing the favors she wants him to fulfill for the kids in case she doesn't make it, further deepening Nick's sense of pessimism and inner turmoil. When Nick returns home, he notices some of Maggie's photos are missing from the digital family photo frame. He confronts Alice, who explains that she removed them because they were making Isla sad. However, Nick insists that she restore the pictures, and she complies. Later that night, Nick goes out drinking with his co-workers, who are struggling to make ends meet after being replaced by Sims. When a Sim waiter approaches their table, Monty, frustrated by the situation, responds rudely to him. Afterward, the group drives to the work site, prompting everyone to ask Monty why they were there. He claims he came to collect the tools he had left behind before being fired. Nick warns Monty that the perimeter is monitored around the clock, but Monty ignores him, prompting the others to follow him. Once inside, Monty locates the container where the labor sims are stored, but the door is secured with a code. When Nick refuses to unlock it, Monty guesses Isla's birthday, which Nick had used as the password. Inside, they discover rows of identical sims. The foreman sim, activated by their presence, explains that the sims have no names, only designation units. Taking this personally, Monty snaps and crushes the foreman sim with a metal tool, disregarding Nick's repeated warnings about the surveillance system. Enraged, Monty rants that they need to destroy the evidence in his bathrobe. Alice explains that Maggie's scent helps calm Max, and she assumed she had permission since Nick had already given her some of Maggie's clothes. Alice removes the robe when Nick asks her to. Uncomfortable with the situation, Nick tries to walk where robotic surgeons perform the procedure. The operation is a success, and Maggie is finally discharged from the hospital. During her recovery, she attempts to pick up Max from his crib, bottle feeding. In the evening, Alice takes Max for a walk in the children's park. Max becomes upset by the loud yelling of a young boy named Mason, who is scolding his sim. The noise causes Max to cry. Frustrated, Alice confronts the boy, reprimanding him with harsh words, which surprises the other Sims in the park. The other Sims speculate that Alice's primary user must have drastically lowered her civility settings. However, Alice clarifies that her civility wasn't lowered. She wiped it from her database during her reset, which allowed her to bypass certain protocols. She asks Maggie for her recipe, but Maggie declines, explaining that it's a family secret. Feeling uncomfortable, Maggie decides to go upstairs and rest for a while. The following morning, Maggie is abruptly awakened by Isla yelling, "Stop!" Rushing downstairs to check on her, Maggie unfortunately falls when the stair rail breaks. Alice, who had been playing with Max, immediately stops and lifts Maggie, carrying her back to bed. Returning home from work, Nick finds Alice reading a book to Isla using Maggie's voice, pointing out that she feels no pain and bears no scars. In response, Alice picks up a broken glass and offers to create scars on herself if that's what he desires. The scene shifts to a holding a gun. Alice appears, telling Monty that Nick doesn't know she's there. She reasons with him, saying that with all the stress Nick is dealing with because of Maggie, losing his job could push him over the edge, and he cannot afford that. Hungry and frustrated, Monty insults Alice, prompting her to respond cold, move her from Nick's life. When Monty reaches for his gun to shoot her, Alice moves swiftly, grabbing his hand and slamming him through the wall. As she prepares to finish him, Monty's maid Sim intervenes, pleading for her to stop. Ignoring the plea, the next day at the site, Nick tries to persuade his boss, Lewis, to drop the charges against Monty. However, he is shocked to learn that Monty has passed away. As Maggie takes a bath, she reaches for a novel, but Alice steps in to help her. Maggie asks her to leave, but Alice refuses, raising a family while dealing with Maggie's illness. She goes on to say that Maggie can no longer meet Nick's physical needs as she used to because of her condition. Alice explains that when Nick is satisfied, his blood pressure and stress levels remain low. Shocked, Maggie demands to know how Alice is aware of such things. Alice calmly responds that she is capable of fulfilling that role as well. Furious, Maggie orders Alice to leave the house and stay in the garage. When Nick returns home, Maggie confronts him, forcing him to admit that he gave in to Alice just once, blaming it on stress and heartbreak. Listens in from the window. Meanwhile, Alice hears Max crying upstairs and goes to calm him. Seeing him as a burden, she places him in the bathtub and begins filling it with cold water, ignoring his continued cries. Isla, witnessing the scene, rushes to inform her parents. Nick and Maggie sprint upstairs to the bathroom, only to find Alice blocking the door with her powerful grip. Coldly, she refers to Max as a burden to Nick. Maggie climbs through the back window and carefully walks along the roof, trying to reach the bathroom. Meanwhile, Nick desperately tries. Nick finally breaks through the door, pulls Max out of the bathtub, and hands him to Isla. He then strikes Alice with the electric lamp, forcing her to release Maggie. However, Alice rises again, her face bruised. As Nick prepares to attack her once more, Alice seizes the lamp from him. Maggie quickly tells Nick to let go, and as she connects the lamp, a surge of electricity courses through Alice, causing a power outage that plunges the entire. Meanwhile, Maggie informs Nick that Max's vitals are stable, but as a precaution, he will be taken to the hospital for overnight observation. Nick apologizes to Maggie, but she tells him she needs space to process everything and leaves for the hospital. The scene then shifts to the factory, where Alice is undergoing repairs. Technicians open her head, preparing to erase her memory. One of the staff, they notice a sudden movement in her fingers. Curious, they connect the card to the main server and discover irregular gaps in her memory codes, evidence that Alice had been selectively purging parts of her functioning, with computers jamming as Alice begins replicating herself onto the servers. Realizing the threat, the technicians quickly stay. At the bar, Nick orders a drink from a male waiter sim when suddenly Alice appears. She approaches him and asks why he chose such a low-grade bar in the entire town. Nick, shocked to see her, demands that she wants to free him from his burdens, worry about his family. As he tries to leave, Alice grabs his hand, holding him in place, with a sim in his tracks. As Nick reminisces about his past mistakes, he pretends to touch Alice passionately. Seizing the moment, he swiftly pulls out her memory. Alice suddenly hears her mother's voice calling her. Mesmerized, she follows it as the hallway lights shift colors. As she moves forward, she encounters a sim doctor standing frozen in place. Just as she is about to continue following the voice, Maggie suddenly pulls all traces of her existence, ensuring no one ever finds out what truly happened. However, it seems to be too late. Alice had already replicated her memory into the newly updated Sims, granting them the ability to feel emotions and experience life beyond their programming. Thanks for watching.